Hey, good morning, Tyler Street. Happy Sunday. So good to see you guys online. It's so good to see you guys as always. I hope you guys had a great week and you're enjoying the evenings that are getting a little cooler. The days are a little warm for me still, but the evenings are getting cool. So we're moving into fall. That's always a nice feeling. At least for me, it is. Welcome back to Mission Month. I'm very excited for, as always, Dereje and Mindi that we support, the Path of the Ethiopian Light. So excited to have them with us today and excited to see what they share with us today. As you probably heard last week, we do have a Traeger out in the lobby. So if you want to try and win a brand new Traeger that someone won in a different contest, it's $10 a raffle, and everything that we bring in from that, we will give straight to our mission. So definitely get in on that. $10 a ticket, or you can get 15 tickets for $100. So it's a great opportunity to win a Traeger, but even a better opportunity to support our missions abroad. The winner will be announced on October 30th, and that will also be the day that we take up a special offering for our missions. We support our missionaries throughout the year, but we always want to take a time aside to take a special offering and just give them above and beyond what we already do, just to continue to support the work that they do around the world. So I'm looking forward to that, so be a part of that. I mentioned to you guys about the picnic at the Planks and how good that was and how you guys should continue to do that. Well, some of us got together and thought, look, our schedules are busy, holidays don't make it any better, so we're just going to try and give you an excuse to get together. So I know your calendar's already filling up, but if you have November 6th, and that's a Sunday, if you have the evening open from 4:30 to 8:30, you should definitely join us for our Tyler Street Family Night. And it's just another chance to get together, have an outdoor movie, play some games, eat food together, and you don't have to do all the work. You might help put some of it together, but you don't have to host the whole thing. So just wanted to give you guys another opportunity of coming together and spending time together. So be a part of that November 6th. One more thing I'd like to mention, if I may, real quick, is the youth group. We're planning a trip up to Sweet Home, Oregon, to join that church and several other churches in a youth rally. And it does cost us a little more money because we have to rent a van to caravan kids up there. So we need about $1,000 to take kids up there. And if you're willing to to continue to support us with your prayers and telling people about youth group, but also financially, I would really appreciate it so that we can get the van that we need and we can take these kids up to a youth rally and just have a good time with other churches and get more connected with the body across states. So that's what I have for you today. Thanks so much for being with us online. I'm going to turn it over to one of our elders, and we'll be right back with you.
So in front of you is this little emblem here. If you guys want to get that up and get that bad boy going. The purpose of this blood and bread is to remind us of Jesus' sacrifice and pretty much God's greatness. And this week, you guys have probably seen him already. We have like the best family in the world with us today. About 6 months ago, I walked into church like everybody else did, and Bob was like, hey, we're going to Africa in 6 weeks. And I was like, cool, because God is great, right? 6 weeks down the road, I'm in Africa with Dereje and Mindi and the family, and Bob and I are sitting there like, what are we doing here? And I think when we came back, we kind of said this, like, what are we doing here? But we knew God was great, and we knew God had plans. And 3 or 4 days later, prayers were answered, of course, and we're just living in Africa and loving it, right? And just really taking everything in. And I get back to America, and life kind of goes back to normal, but not really. Because experiences like that are just life-changing, and they really show you how great God is. And you look at your life around you, and just seeing God in my life has been the most amazing thing for me. Just seeing how he's moved me, where he's put me just this year alone is crazy. And it's just a nice reminder every Sunday that we get to take this cup, which sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes it's just juice to me. But there's weeks like this week that it's a reminder that, hey, like, God has done it all for us. And, so I'm going to pray. Keep in mind this week that the greatness of God is like 1 billion times more than you can imagine right now. I mean, take the greatest thing, take the best plan you have for either today or this week or this month or this year. Take those best plans and multiply it by 1 million, because that's what God's going to do for you. And that's what that reminder is right there. Let's pray. Dear God, I just thank you so much for just leading me in my life and just taking me down all the curves and pathways that I didn't really want to go sometimes, God, but just lead me and lead this church to where you want us to go. Hey, God, we're so thankful for the Allums being here today with us, God, and just the amazing work they're doing. And I just pray that as we continue to support them as our missionaries and other missionaries, God, that you just guide us, open our hearts to possibly go as well, and just be with us every decision we make, God. Help us not turn away from what you have for us, but just accept it with open arms. We pray these things in Jesus' name, amen.
We are going to let the kids go to junior church, and that includes our youth class. You guys are allowed to go now as well, I think. Yep, that's it. Cool. Good. Use the right one. I'll use the right one. This morning, we are just blessed to. I shouldn't have started this way. Here we go. This is going to sound weird. Bob and Smee are over in Europe, so we are blessed to have some dear friends here for Mission Month. And it's been, how long have you guys have been coming here for a minute? We were just talking about how the boys were like this tall, and now I was looking up to him, and he's got they both have great taste in shoes and whatnot, and so we get along there. But I do appreciate Ian bringing up him and Bob going to Ethiopia. I know for some of you guys, you look at Ian, right, this adventurous spirit saying like, yep, I'm going to Ethiopia. And then you look at Bob. You're like, what is that guy doing going over to Ethiopia? And his heart for people, Ian's heart for people. And where that came from for Ethiopia is the Allums and their heart for people and Dereje's heart for people, putting themselves in extremely extremely uncomfortable situations, putting themselves in the tension of life to figure out how can we do what God has called us to do and not ignore that call. And so I'm just so thankful you guys are here and thankful that you guys can give us an update on what's going on and encourage our souls in that. So would you guys give the Allums a warm welcome, and then they're going to come up and tell us what's going on. So I'll give you this one. Absolutely.
Good morning. We are so happy to be here with you all. It does feel like it has been way too long, and even though we get to see Ian not too long ago, it still is just amazing to get to come and be with you guys every time. And we just love the worship, you guys. Thank you so much for that. Such a blessing. We were talking about what we wanted to share with you all, and we felt like we knew all of the video and pictures that Ian had taken on this last trip. And so we're hoping that you've gotten to see quite a bit more probably this year than you might have normally. And so we're gonna give you maybe a little different type of update this time. We wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about growth and roots, and I guess I'll start with saying that trees have been on my mind a lot recently. I don't know, this last trip to Ethiopia prompted a lot of conversations about trees. That may sound funny, but there were all these stories that we were just remembering that had to do with how certain trees had kind of taken over the skyline around the city, and how they had actually been planted like hundreds of years ago, when just a few were brought into the country, and we were just talking about how they had spread and become this amazing forest now. And one of the trees that has always been my favorite is one of the ones you can see here in this picture. It's an acacia tree, and this is of one that's in Ethiopia with some animals grazing under it, but it's a really interesting tree to me because it's the kind that you might see in pictures where they just grow really wide, and you see them like all across Africa. And so I just remember having seen so many pictures of this type of tree before I had ever been to Africa, and then actually finding out all the thorns that are on these trees. They're like this long. Really dangerous. You don't want to climb this type of tree. But there's just been so many things that I have learned about these trees, and it reminded us of the verse that we wanted to start with this morning. So I'm going to read our verse and kind of share a little bit more about what we're going to go over, and then I'll hand it over to Dereje. Jeremiah 17, 7-8. He's like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream and does not fear when heat comes, for its leaves remain green, and it's not anxious in the year of drought, for it does not cease to bear fruit. So this morning we just wanted to share with you a little bit more about roots and the roots of our ministry in particular, how that kind of fits into everything that has happened over the past like 12 years now, and the growth that God has provided, and then just share some things that we're really grateful for with you guys. This first one, I realize is probably pretty difficult to read, so I'm sorry it's got so much on there, but I'm just going to give you kind of an idea of what this timeline is about. We wanted to share this with you because we were able to share with Ian and Bob some history of Ethiopia that we felt like was so important to the way that we do ministry in Ethiopia, and we wanted to make sure that everyone kind of knew some of that timeline that we feel like is the soil that we have planted seeds in, and so it's really good to know about this. In Ethiopia, there is the story that Queen Sheba, when she went to visit King Solomon, that the two of them had a child. And so the line of kings, ever since that time, all connect back to Solomon. So that story is seen inside of churches. It's painted in pictures in the walls. It's in books all across Ethiopian history. There's an entire book called the Kebra Nagast that goes through and like details the lineage of every king. And there's a little, there's portions in there where it's like, okay, well, in this area, this person took over and they weren't part of that lineage, And so you see how they have tried to keep track of all of this throughout history. So that's back around 965 to 900 BCE. The child that is said in that legend to have been had by Solomon and Queen Sheba is King Menelik. And King Menelik is really where we see like this beginning of the adoption of Judaism in Ethiopia. And so you start to see certain traditions that change during that time. And Ethiopian culture still today connects back to that incredibly strongly. There's certain things like seeing churches and the way that they're built. The idea there is much more so of this idea that each place is a temple of worship to God. And so the people in that community who may not have very much at all will put quite a bit into the building of each and every church that you see in Ethiopia, because there really just is this idea that this is where the community comes together to be in God's presence. So there's just a lot of things that actually relate back to that time period. The next one, of course, is the Ethiopian eunuch. And you all know that story. And so somewhere between the 1st and the 3rd century, you see Christianity just really starting to grow in Ethiopia. And you get as far as 341, which is when one of the kings of Ethiopia, which I think this is super cool, one of the kings of Ethiopia actually declares Christianity as the official religion of the nation. So looking back through history, that makes Ethiopia only the 2nd nation in the entire world to officially adopt Christianity for the whole nation. So very rich history there. About 300 years later, you have Islam enter. And the way that Islam enters is actually a beautiful thing to Christianity, because you have one of Muhammad's wives who is fleeing due to the fighting that was taking place right before he died and right afterwards between different clans within Islam. And so one of those wives flees, and she comes to the king in Ethiopia at that time, because it was known throughout that part of the world that he was a Christian king, and that he would give refuge to those who were fleeing from something. And so she comes with her family and asks essentially for refuge there. And he knows that she is not coming from a Christian or Judaism, yeah. But he says, this is part of who we are, that we want to protect you and take care of you, and that you're welcome to be here. So that's actually the very first time that Islam enters into the country. And then the last part here, which I have to turn around because I can't see it that far, is just kind of giving you an idea, and this is what I'm talking about, the soil, like what is going on in Ethiopia, where we are planting this ministry, where it's been planted. You've got about 111 million people in Ethiopia. It's a huge country. And at least as far back as 2007 census, you had about 34% of the country who identifies as Sunni Muslims. You have 44% who would identify as Ethiopian Orthodox, and you have about 19% who would be Christians that identify with any other group besides those two. So that's just kind of what we think about the soil. When we think about the way that kind of the ministry started, that's kind of what we were working with. So I'll pass this to you. Oh, you've got your own, sorry.
Good morning. My name is Dereje. I born and grew at Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. And, I was homeless Uganda. And after that, me and Mandi, we met and we get engaged. And, after 2 years we met, I came back here and work, 10 years. Yeah, around 10 years. We saved some money. 12 years ago, we went to Ethiopia to do mission work. But when we moved, I don't have any idea how to start, because after 30 years going back to Ethiopia, so that one make difficult for me, because the culture, friends, everything's changed. But I'm planning to start a mission, but I don't have any connection with anybody. I'm trying to figure out how to start, mission, how to connect with young people, all, confused, all scared and desperate. And, our friend, he came from America, and he brought us a lot of ball, and just, in my house, and drive me crazy. One day, I grab all of them and take to church building. So when I take them from car, one ball fall down, the kids found it and begging me. Most time, when I was there, I give ball for kids, but always I see them in shops. They sell them for money. But I told them, I'm not giving you this ball, but if you need ball, just you have to be 12 like a team, and I'll give you because I don't want them to sell. So the guy, he came with 12 kids. I give him the next day, and morning time, a lot of kids, they came in our church building, they want ball. And as God called me, hey, Dereje, a lot of kids here, they are looking ball, Did you say, you want to give, if they are 12? No. So I start talking with them. And later, I ended up, doing, soccer ministry. And so I was working, they call it China camp, it is ghetto. So when I do there, working, ball, I told them, okay, I want to sponsor you. I want to make, for you easy, but, I don't want to only teach you soccer. I don't want to only support you, but, you need to know God. So I was training, the coach, they train them team. We work like that and become big. Finally, demonstration, because they want to throw the government everywhere, going crazy, and opposition government, all they want those groups to be them side, and to do those things, they have to come talk to me. I said, hey, my job is teaching Bible. My job is show them life, how it work. I'm not a politician. I'm not support anybody. I don't want to do. Most of them, they are upset, sometimes become dangerous, and the end become arresting, killing, all those things when they go. And people, they told me, hey, Dereje, next, they will ask you to come to speak in TV on behalf of government, to tell, our government is good, I told them I don't want to do those things. So become serious, and the end, my friend told me, hey, Dereje, you need to leave this country, otherwise it will be dangerous. Or few people, one guy, he's poisoned, and the other guy, we don't know what is happening because he don't want to speak in TV. The third one, you are the one, you need to leave. I told him no. Finally, one night, he came in my house, said, Dereje, if you don't have money, I'll buy you a ticket. You need to leave this place. So his name is Jerry. I know he's, he don't have much money, but if he offers this money, means I'm in danger. I told Mandy, hey, kids, let's go. Jerry, he said to me, he want to buy me ticket. He wanted me to leave this country because international church, he has connection with a lot of people. So it is not guessing, it is serious things. So when I'm talking like that, and there is a guard who work with us, and he came, he worked for government person. Hey, Dereje, I don't think, some things I want to tell you. I don't think you like it. What is that? I think probably, government people, soon they come ask you to speak in TV. And also, your ministry or your soccer sponsor and things, all, they want you to speak them, how we have, good government things. So if you are not do those things, maybe you will be in danger. I said, you know what, forget it, let's get up our bag. And we got our bag and left to Kenya. And after that, become so violent Ethiopia. And we came here for 6 months and we stay here. And when after pass, we went to Ethiopia and we start working. Now, there is new rule, the first one, 10 people?
Yeah,
10 people only, they get together. And later they said 5, and later they said 2 people.
Like
So
limits on how many people could gather in a
together
place.
and to talk. So we cannot do our ministry. So finally I said, always, we make, we start, making sandwich, egg sandwich, and to give for street kids. And so we start doing those things and talk, one-to-one. And, we start, I have one favorite kid who's going around. This kid is sick. This kid is, he didn't eat that much. This kid's, he's sick. Or, he told me about kids' information. We become good friend. And finally, I told him, hey, calls when you need anything, I'll come and I'll pay for you for calling things. So one day, police arrested him. So I went to try to find him. I cannot find him. I drove all city. He's not there. I asked, oh no, they arrested him. Why? And he stole small things like food things. So I went to juvenile prison. So I started asking, giving clothes, getting food. The juvenile prison who's in charge, he looked at me. He said, you and him, how are you? He's my friend. I was working like this. He helped me with the street kids. And he asked me, why don't you come, here? Half of them, the street kids. And, from different city, different country, different side out of Addis Ababa. So why don't you come, see them, if interested, why don't you help them? So I start asking him, what you need? He said to me, you need me to make him the first goal and soccer, and we start working in juvenile prison. That is, the juvenile prison connection.
So that was kind of how the seeds were planted. And I know a lot of you have heard some of those stories before, but we wanted to kind of connect that back for you because, I guess you can't see that as well. We really look back at that time period and think about all of the things that felt like there was this seedling that sprouted. During the beginning of that sports ministry, Dereje was able to connect with, we had to limit it to about 500 kids to be in the program at one time because there were so many who wanted to. And there was over 1,000 people coming to the soccer field, and he was having a chance to share Christ with all of those people who came on the soccer field, but then, like he said, through the coaches, and then those coaches became Christians. And so the way that we think as humans is that, okay, this is great, this is working out really well. We've got all these coaches, they're becoming Christians, they're, sharing Christ with these teams of people and connecting with the families that are connected to those kids. And, God's gonna take something from that and grow that even more. But then when we look back, that was when Dereje was describing all of the civil unrest that was happening. And then there was a state of emergency and all these other things that kept limiting. And it felt like that little seedling that was just starting to grow, kept getting cut back down and cut back down and cut back down. But what we ended up realizing, as of course hindsight's 2020, is that you look backwards and you realize that some of those people who became Christians during that time were the ones who joined us in trying to reach out to the kids who were on the street. And they were the ones making these sandwiches. They were the ones going out and talking to the kids. And then they were the ones that first went into the prison with us when Dereje made that connection. And there's just so many moments that we think of. I know Adam and Zaun are like, why is a picture of us sweeping up here? But it just reminded us this was just cleaning up after a big feast that we had while Bob and Ian were there for the kids. And Adam and Zaun were just helping to clean up at the end and got a dog in there trying to pick out a few things. And so many moments are like that. So many moments that we look back on are those moments that are just unseen, and you don't really know exactly what the importance is at that moment until you're able to look back. And then you're able to see a lot of times that that growth was happening in different places even than we knew. Things that were because seeds were planted, but also completely out of our control. And that really kind of takes us into that next period, which is just the past few years. As you all know, there's been the pandemic, but then in Ethiopia on top of that, there's been war. And so over the past few years, there has continued to be thing after thing after thing that just made us feel like we were just maintaining, just barely keeping our staff going and helping them through crisis situations and keeping the kids healthy and just, really trying to do our best to serve in the ways that God was showing us, but maybe not seeing exactly what we thought we would see by that point in time. And all this does take me back to Adam and Zion. If you're parents, I'm sure you have a wall or something where you have maybe kept track of your kids, yeah? Okay, so we've got a wall, and it's that spot where, they're standing there and you measure and you're marking what the date is and everything. And not to embarrass them, but I think all of us have experienced this. When you're young and you're wanting to grow taller, you come to your parents and you're like, okay, measure me. Like, I'm pretty sure I grew. And you're like, okay, but we measured you 2 weeks ago. I don't think you're going to see any changes. It's 2 weeks. No, I'm positive. I really grew this time, So we have all of these marks that, you look back at it and it's just identical. It's like right at the same line, as the last time that we measured. And then you have those moments where usually you didn't even realize it, and you go ahead and you measure again just because you haven't measured in a while, and then you go, oh my goodness, look at how much you grew. I thought so. That's why none of your clothes fit, And so those are those growth spurt moments. And so the next part was just that we wanted to share with you just a little bit. Did you want to share about what's going on in the prison, like day to day, what our staff does?
Okay. Our staff, we have, for a moment we have 6 staff, and 2 coach, 2 psychiatrists and psychologists, and preacher kind, and 2 of them, guard them nighttime, because there is 2 rooms, the other side, and A and B block, they stay with them because there is guard, to protect them. Sometimes guard. Some reason when they have some problem, they beat them. To stop those one, we hire 2 people. They stay, and Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday we have Bible study, and Tuesday and Thursday we have our staff they read book for the kids, and the rest they teach them how to take care of the bed and how to clean, how to shave. Also, when they are sick, our staff, they take them to clinic. And, sometimes, kids, when they passed away, our staff is the one, they take them to family. And also, when they have, court appointment, our staff, the one, they take care, they cut hair, they put them new clothes, new shoes. Because in Ethiopia, as they see, if you are dirty, and automatically you are criminal kind things, everybody they think. So to make them look innocent or decent, or they change kind things, we give them clean clothes, clean shoes when they go court. When they release them, our staff, they take them, if they come from village, they take them to village. If there's family, most time families are not coming because they are embarrassed. The kids, they did some things, they're shameful, and they are mad at them, they don't want to take them. So our staff, they go there, talk to the family, talk to, the neighbors, everybody, and sometimes they say no, so they ended up on the street. But most times they take the kids, the families, they take them, and sometimes the parents, they said, I cannot afford anymore these kids, to keep here. I don't have anything, so I'm sick. When they say those things, we give them some money to start. So this is our stuff they do.
So what Dereje is describing is for about 140 boys right now. There's a few girls, but it is mostly boys. And they're from all over the country, which means that they're coming from many different language backgrounds and different faiths. So within Ethiopia, it's a pretty diverse group of kids that our staff is ministering to and working with and communicating with and translating for, and just a lot of things that are going on in the background every day. Let me see here if we. So when we kind of look through like the past 8 years or so, we've realized that there have been over 5,000, I don't have an exact count, but well over 5,000 children who have come and gone, not counting the ones who are there right now, who our ministry has been able to share the word of God with for a pretty extended period of time for most of them. Of course, there's some kids who might end up being there for a couple of months, but for the most part, it's a much longer time. And so these are kids who have felt the love of God in a place that was once much, much worse, and have protected them and just helped them to be able to know that there is still hope and that there is a future for them and that God loves them and that there is a way that they can continue to stay connected with those who believe in God and who want to be a family to them. So, you know, when we think back on all of those years and kind of just the beginning and how seeds were planted and what was going on in the country and the times that we felt like this little tree was getting, you know, cut back and the times that it felt like it was just continuing to grow and grow and grow, you know, we're reminded of kind of the dreams that started all of this. So like Ian mentioned, you know, just how we had been connected to Bob, and that was through Bob and Smee's son, Ezra, that they're off visiting right now, and just connections that we had. And so that's been for quite a while. I can't remember, but probably close to 20 years. And when we think back to the dreams that we first had, they were actually for a Christian vocational center that we had planned to build on that very first picture that you saw where it's us with the kids when they were little and we're holding the soccer balls, and Dereje was telling you about how that all began. That's on land that Dereje has. And so the very first dream was that we'd be building this Christian vocational center. But that land is outside of the capital where all of the kids are that are homeless. And so we realized we really needed to get to know those kids and understand them and come to where they are first. And that is what led us down the path that we've been on. But what has happened just over this past year is what I know Ian would have already shared with you, but we have seen those dreams coming to a place that is very different, kind of full circle for us, where now what Dereje was able to negotiate a couple of trips ago was that when these kids move into a new facility that's across the street, that we'd be able to take over the current facility that we've been working in for 8 years and finally have a base for our ministry, a place where we'd be able to do quite a bit, which we'll share with you. But then the crazy thing that happened was Dereje went to try to negotiate that. And instead, they also said, well, sure, like that's not a big deal. But we also have this other location we'd like to give you as well. And so then they took him to this beautiful place that is just, it's an aerial view here so that you can see all the trees that are on this about 8 acres of land surrounded by the rest of the city. But it's the home of the last queen of Ethiopia. This is kind of where I wanted you to know some of that background of the history of Ethiopia and how special within Ethiopian society those connections are. And so for them to give this particular location was extremely meaningful. This was the last queen of Ethiopia's home that she had grown up in. And it was a place that later, when she becomes queen, she set that aside to be used for female orphans. And so since that time, it has been a home for over 100, about 120 female orphans. Pretty large age group there. But it's essentially more of an institutional style home. And so over the past few years, professionals that work with that home have realized that trying to put 120 girls together in this one spot is not the healthiest way to provide for them. And so they decided that they're going to take the girls and put them more into home settings that are all in this neighborhood that you can see around the land, and have people who will be there as house moms, house dads, with about 7 to 10 girls in each home. And so they're preparing for that over the next year, year and a half. And then once that happens, they would like for us to do what they have seen happen already at the juvenile prison, which is being able to really connect with the kids in a way that shares Christ and that helps the kids to transition more successfully. And that's where we wanted to kind of share with you how that timeline specifically relates right now. Because when we look at that timeline for us, we see how God has used specific people in power within Ethiopia to really grow the kingdom of God at certain points. And that's exactly what we see happening right now. And so Dereje is going to share with you about Dr. Tamrat, the person who he's been working most closely with on these plans.
Yeah. His name is Dr. Tamrat, and also he met him in Bob. He's Christian, Protestant. And the first, when I went, to negotiate, to give me juvenile prison, I went there. He said, hey, Dereje is here. As I told him, he said, he came. He said to me, hey, let's meet our office. Okay, I went to his office and we start talking. Why you wanna? He asked me why you do these things, why you help the young people, things. I told him, hey, I was homeless. Also, when I was young, I didn't play soccer because it was communism. If you play soccer, they see you are running strong, immediately they think, you have to join military. So I didn't play. Now I regret. So I don't want young people to feel like that. I want them to provide. Also, I'm Christian. And finally, he said, okay, yeah, I can see. That's what you are doing because you are Christian, Also, he said, hey, I'm also Christian. So he asked me, where I live. I told him I'm living currently in America, but I was living Kenya, Uganda. But when I was Uganda for 3 years, I'm homeless. He said, oh, okay. And finally, he told me his story. He's orphan, and he was beaten. And finally, some people from America adopt him, and they took him to America, and they be parent, they teach him, they send him to school. He become doctor. When he's doctor, he said, okay, I have to go back home, have to help. So he's working with, children and, women and children ministry without salary, free service he's doing. So he said, hey, Dereje, what is your plan? I told him I want to do juvenile prison, feeding, street kids, giving education. He said, here, I'm giving you. So his plan for future, maybe within 2-3 years, he want to give up and he want to be a preacher, he told me. So I told him, just stay a little bit longer until, all those things, don't leave now. If you leave, it will be until I get, all title, until I get everything, please don't leave. So we decide, we agree, and he want to stay until all things done. So please pray for him, to continue. Yeah.
And so what Dereje just described, I guess, is why we felt like we really wanted to share with you just this idea of the ministry as this tree that's been planted and the different stages of growth that it's gone through and the times that we couldn't see as much, which for us felt like was kind of during the pandemic and the war the past few years especially, where we felt like we were just maintaining. But now how we're able to look back at that time and actually see, like in Jeremiah, how that was when the roots were growing the most. Because when we think about the roots really connecting to the source, to the water, and what has allowed that tree to continue to grow has been just that continually never giving up and continuing to share the word of God and be there and show love for the kids, and just doing it even when we couldn't see exactly where any of this was going, for sure. Those few years especially, even because we've been back here and Dereje had surgery and we were trying to figure out, kind of what we were going to do as far as here or there and working through our staff and just so many things that felt turbulent over the past few years. Those were actually the periods of time that created this sense of trust that led Dr. Tamrat and others to say, we really trust what you're doing and your care and your love for these kids, because most missionaries, most nonprofits, most groups had to leave for their own safety during that time. But that meant that most of the services that were coming from outside were gone, and then to come back has been difficult. Some have come back and many, many, many have not. And so the fact that we never stopped, that you never stopped, that everyone who has supported this ministry continued to love on these kids through all of that, made such a huge difference that that's what led us to this point where they're now saying, you know what, why don't you just take this? Because we know what you're doing and we know what God is doing, and it's yours. And we just can't believe that. We're so thankful for that. Yeah, God is so good. So we feel like now we're in a growth spurt. And so this has probably been shared as well too, but right now what we're focusing on, the most urgent thing that we're working on right now is just, well, first of all, let me say that just like with growth spurts, everything that we plan, excuse me, is never on the timeline that we have. So we're still waiting for the kids to be moved over to this new location, which is almost ready for them. And we're still waiting for some of those little details that have to happen to make that move. But we know that we're very, very close. And so when that happens is when the land would become the property of the ministry. And in order for that to happen, there's a few things that Dereje is about to share about. But we just wanted to share with you some of the goals so that you know what we hope to do with that property as soon as we are able to take it over. Again, this kind of goes back to dreams that we had long, long ago and plans that we actually had made and researched and got ready for so long ago. But we wanted first to let you know that the ministry with the kids in the prison doesn't actually change at all. They're going across the street, and so our staff goes across the street. And they're going to be able to continue to do all of the same things right across the street from us. What changes is those kids, both while they're in prison, but especially as they're transitioning out, as they get towards the end of a term, when they're released. This is a place with people who they already know, people who they've already built a relationship with, that they can come to and have a place to go. So what Dereje just shared, especially for a lot of the older kids, that's especially where it happens. Sometimes it'll be easier for a family to feel that a younger child made a mistake and take them back home. But sometimes when it's an older child, there's a sense of, you kind of dishonored our family, and you need to kind of find your own way now. And so especially, but what I say about older is still like 16. So we've got a lot of 14, 15, 16-year-olds who end up back on the street because they just don't have anywhere to go. And so this would especially help some of those kids to be able to take a kind of a vocational track and learn a skill that would help them to be employed. And one of the things that we're really excited about, do you want to share about what you've already worked out with the government for creating some businesses that would sustain the ministry?
Yeah, and I went there, to get, the juvenile prison, and he took me, he said, hey, you can't have this place. When I saw it is big, my dream always, juvenile prison, not like other things. So I told him, no, I don't need these things. It is too big. So he said to me, hey, Dereje, you help, prisoner, who does crime. These girls, someone just baby and drop them somewhere. They are not do crimes. They are not bad girls. Just, they need, love, and patience and to take care of them. You have that things, I told him. You don't know me, how you said those things. And finally he said, hey, we help you wherever we can. And, he said, if you want to open, juvenile prison, like, carpenter, dressing things, government, they buy your product. Always our office, they buy furniture, they buy beds, and they buy all kind of things we buy from you, not from anywhere. If you do school reform, government, they buy you from you straight. You don't need even to look anywhere finance. Just the first start those things and show us your product, and government, they write check for you. You don't need even to look anywhere. But we want you to run that place. He said to me, even, there is company, if we give those place, and they can't do it, but only relationship, business, and money, and, those people like stuff. But you make them like a family. You make them like your friend, your kids, and your, also top of that, you teach them Bible. You teach them, about God. So nobody do those things. Also, you are not give up. You continue for long. So we want to keep you. We want to give you those things.
So the plan is to be able to take this property and for it to both be a place where we can plant a church and actually have our own location for a church, which hasn't been the case for many years. And then also because there are so many buildings, to be able to kind of slowly add on different vocational training programs, which are also businesses, which allows the kids to have some hands-on experience, but also allows income to come in to support this long-term. So we are just about to wrap up, but what we wanted to say is that is where we brought in experts, right? We needed Bob and Ian to come and take a look at some things. But we also really wanted them to be able to come back and share what they saw, just through their own eyes, because it is different for someone who has been there for a long time, and it's always nice to have fresh eyes and to take a look at ministries and to be able to kind of see where they are and experience what the country is like that we work in. And so these are just a few pictures. One in front of the prison there with some of our staff, and then one when we had gone over to a museum that's kind of new in Ethiopia that talks a lot about the history. So we are so thankful that Bob and Ian were able to join us. We are so grateful for their connection to all of you, for the fact that they're able to come back and share stories with you, that you can see their photos, that you can understand from them also what's going on in Ethiopia. And we just wanted to end with some prayer requests. The main thing that's going on right now is that part of kind of this transfer of the land is the building of a fence that has to happen around this old property. That's kind of what marks it as ours, is part of kind of going through in the transfer of the title as well. So Dereje takes off on Wednesday to fly back to Ethiopia for about a month so that he can solidify a few more things, work on some of the stuff that felt like it has gone a little slower since we've been back, make sure some of that stuff goes through more quickly, and then hopefully get started on the building of a fence that it goes around the property. So we ask for your prayers on his travel, on just continued favor with the government, and prayers for our staff, because they are about to transition everybody into a new location. Even though it's across the street, it's a lot of kids. There's still a lot that goes into that. So prayers for them as they go through that.
From 120 kids, when they move, they bring them. They told them 700 kids. So they need a lot of prayer. They get used, 100 or 90 or 110. If it is big, to 120. Now from this number, 700, it will be big. I don't know how they handle. They need a lot of prayer.
So we just want to thank you. We want to thank you for being part of the reason that Roots have grown so well in this ministry, that we're part of this growth spurt now, that you have a chance to see what's going on with us, and we just really ask for your prayers, and we're just grateful for all of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.